Well, good morning, everyone. I really enjoyed the slightly improvisational nature of our service and sitting together this morning. I was intending to be at the Zendo in the city this morning, and as Kancho said, we got 4 inches of snow and ice to deal with. So there you have it. It's a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in this broken world. It's Mary Oliver. It's a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in this broken world. I'll admit that there have been times over the last 2 weeks when I could only see the brokenness, watching the actions of the Trump administration. I see a lot of cruelty and overreach, and that's been difficult. And then, of course, I know that I'm watching it, but many of Trump's supporters see a different story. They believe a different storyline, and they believe that he's doing what he was elected to do. Perhaps partly because that's what he's telling them, uh, which, from my perspective, makes it even more infuriating because he's not. Um, a lot of what he's doing, I believe, would be unpopular if more people knew the facts and knew the consequences. So, over the past 2 weeks, the nagging question is, well, what can we do? What can I do? Can I do anything? And I wrestled with this question because our study texts for this winter's intensive practice period encourage us to reflect on how our practice manifests in the world. Dogen's instructions for the cook was written in 1237, 10 years after Dogen returned from China and 4 years before he left Kyoto to found Eiheiji. Bernie Glassman's instructions to the cook is subtitled "A Zen Master's Lessons in Living a Life That Matters." So I can say over the past 2 weeks, there is some light. The resistance to Trump 2.0 is emerging. It's important and necessary that every illegal action be met with resistance, and all of us can be part of that resistance. So the questions I'm asking today are, how do we practice at this time with all of the fear and the anger and the cruelty and discord and uncertainty and chaos in the world? And what's the path to doing something of service in the world? Now, I don't really need to give this talk. I see it every day on our mailing list. Torre inviting people to a march to help represent the cares and concerns of the transgendered people, and also acknowledging that there are still moments of beauty as we walk outside in nature. But still, the question arises for all of us, how do we practice at this time? And what's the path for being of service? And I realized our teachers have given us some answers to this question. And Bernie Glassman gave us the path of the Zen Peacemaker. So that's what I'll talk about today. Uh, Instructions to the Cook was published in 1996, and we've all been studying that text. Sorry, Instructions for the Cook, Bernie's book. In 1998, 2 years later, Bernie published another book called Bearing Witness, which tells the story of how and why he was moved to create the Zen Peacemaker order. And it's the story of how his practice led him to commit his life to social action. And so, as I read it, Instructions to the Cook is about bodhisattva action. It's about manifesting Zen in our life, in every aspect of our life. But how does our practice allow us to be agents of peace in a broken world? And so the Zen Peacemaker order has three tenets that I think are at least a recipe for consideration. The first tenet is I will embody not knowing, thereby giving up fixed ideas. The second tenet is I will bear witness, opening my heart to the joy and suffering of the world. And the third tenet is I will take loving action, arising out of not knowing and bearing witness. So I'll take each of these in turn. The first one is I will embody not knowing, thereby giving up fixed ideas. And in Bearing Witness, the book, the title of the chapter is I Vow to Penetrate the Unknown. So it's a different way of saying it. And in the book, Bernie says the minute we gain something, we gain insight, knowledge, or understanding, we must be ready to let it go and return to the state of unknowing. Without this, we can't go further. This is what we do on the cushion. We're encouraged to become meticulous observers of the five skandhas. What's going on in our body, our feelings of attraction and aversion, our state of mind, and our thoughts. And when we become aware that we're thinking, we try not to get wrapped up too much in the contents of our thoughts. We watch our thoughts arise and fade away. And as they arise and fade away, we learn that we don't need to allow ourselves to identify with our thoughts so much, to attach to our thoughts so much. As Shunryu Suzuki Roshi said, we don't need to allow ourselves to be bothered by our thoughts. They're like waves on an ocean. And the important teaching here is that all views that we cling to cloud the mind. I use the word views. I could say opinions, concepts, beliefs, principles, dogma. Whatever view we cling to, whatever concept or idea we cling to, clouds the mind. This is right, that's wrong, clouds the mind. This is good, I know what good is. That's bad, it clouds the mind. Attachment to views prevents us from penetrating this moment and responding freely to what this moment calls for. Remember the first lines of the Shinshin Ming, the Faith's Mind Sutra. The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. Make the smallest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. If you wish to see the truth, then hold no opinions for or against anything. To set up what you like against what you dislike is the disease of the mind. When the deep meaning of things is not understood, the mind's essential peace is disturbed to no avail. Partisanship and anger and discord are all born when we see anything through the lens of our preconceived views. I vow to penetrate the unknown. And I could go on. I had a koan I wanted to cover just to cover this first vow. But I'll stick to the main storyline today. Perhaps I'll cover this koan in a different talk And this because the storyline today is the Zen peacemaker's path. And it starts with I vow to penetrate the unknown. The second tenet is I vow to bear witness. I will bear witness, opening my heart to the joy and suffering of life. And in the book, Bernie tells a story about a man in Belgium who had abducted 6 girls, and he kept them in an underground cellar and sexually abused them. Before he was caught, 4 of the girls had starved to death. And he tells the story of a woman who was the mother of one of the girls who had died. And a friend of Bernie's, who Bernie describes in some detail, had spoken to this woman for several hours. And he was someone who knew that he himself was responsible for the death of children in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. And the woman, the mother, talked about her pain, her anger, her sense of powerlessness and guilt and loss. But she could not bring herself to hate the man who had killed her daughter. She knew that he could not have done something like that unless he himself had suffered deeply, was in fact still suffering. Her family couldn't accept that this was her attitude, but she felt both the pain of her daughter and her own pain, and that of the man who was the killer. She felt all of it. And this was what we are called to do in this world when we bear witness. This is not an easy practice. Bernie said the approach in Zen practice is based on penetrating the unknown, on starting out with no concepts or ideas about how a killer or his young victim might behave. We bear witness to parts of ourselves that we ordinarily ignore and often avoid. We become the terror and the gnawing hunger of the starving girl, the grief of her mother, the explosive rage and fear of the killer, the distress and shame of his mother. By allowing them to emerge, we are remembering, reconnecting with those parts of ourselves. So if the first vow is the sword of Manjushri, I vow to penetrate the unknown, the second vow is Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion, the bodhisattva of attention. Listening to the cries of the world, we pay attention to the joy and suffering in the universe. We are not separate from them. We become them. Because in reality, we are not separate from those who suffer. So we can bear witness to the fear and pain of those who are transgendered in our society, to those who are at risk of deportation, to those who don't have enough food to eat anywhere in the world, whose aid may be cut off by the Trump administration. And we can also bear witness to our MAGA friends. We can understand how betrayed and lied to by our government and society they must feel. We can understand, given that deep feeling of betrayal, their passion for bold action to shake up the system. I too want bold action to shake up the system. We can understand that their views are shaped by their causes and conditions, that they don't necessarily have the same information we do, that they may not have the space in their lives to cut through the ocean of information and disinformation that they're exposed to, that they may be susceptible to the words and actions of a person who is a master of manipulation. Perhaps we can better understand the craving that Trump and Musk are creating and satisfying the hungry ghosts and the jealous gods that we share our country with. I vow to bear witness. And the final vow is I vow to heal myself and others. In the Zen Peacemaker tenets, it is I will take loving action arising out of not knowing and bearing witness. So how do we do this? So the 5 commitments of a Zen peacemaker, and I encourage you all to read them and to see if you can yourself commit to them, are the following. I commit myself to work towards a culture of nonviolence and reverence for life. I commit myself to working towards a culture of solidarity and a just economic order. I commit myself to work towards a culture of inclusiveness and a life based on truthfulness. I commit myself to work towards a culture of equal rights for all people, respecting and appreciating human diversity. And I commit myself to work towards a culture of sustainability and care for the earth. We must all do what we can. This means we must take care of ourselves. After all, we're sentient beings too. We must shovel our snow, raise our children, prepare our food, take out the trash, take care of our emotional selves, our spiritual selves, by practicing at the Zendo, by being with family and friends. We can also be part of the resistance. We can call our elected representatives. We can protest. We can donate our time and money to organizations that are fighting back. We can share the facts with people that we know, even people we disagree with, and do so respectfully. We can listen respectfully. We can volunteer in a soup kitchen, an animal shelter, a hospital, a Zendo, an environmental organization. We can take care of our friends and our families and our neighbors and our communities. And also we can write and dance and make music and play with our children and our dogs. We can breathe deeply of this life. And with respect to this third vow, I vow to heal myself and others. I will take loving action arising out of not knowing and bearing witness. Bernie told us one other thing. He told us, don't wait. Don't wait until you are enlightened to be of service. I only met Bernie twice in my life, and I'd like to tell a little story about one of the times that when I met him. I was practicing at the Village Zendo sometime when we were back on Varick Street. And Bernie was teaching a class somewhere in the village. It might have been the New School. Maybe there was an organization called the Shambhala Center. I'm not sure where he was teaching. And it was a class for anybody who came in, anybody who registered. These weren't formal Zen students. And any of you who met Bernie, you would know that he was very down to earth. He was wearing jeans. He had on some sort of a embroidered vest. And we sat on chairs in a circle. Um, we started with some sitting, and then he opened up the floor for questions. during his prepared remarks, he talked about how to do zazen, dropping body and mind. I think someone asked him how long he sits every day. He said he sits for 30 minutes. And then I kind of noticed he got a little impatient and he said, let's go for a walk. And I thought this was pretty radical at the time, but we all went for a walk. We all agreed, yeah, let's go for a walk. We didn't know where we were going. We didn't know where he was taking us. But we walked out the front door of the place, some of us walking, talking to others, some of just walking by ourselves. And we walked over to Tompkins Square Park. And then we sat zazen on the grass for about a half an hour with people throwing balls and frisbees and having their lunch and chatting with their friends or just sitting quietly on benches. And Bernie opened the floor again for questions. And I only remember two things that he said. And both of these, I remember not really understanding at the time that he was teaching me. One was when he asked something to like, he was asked by someone, something to the effect of what is Zen or what is practice? And his response was Zen is your life. Zen is your entire life. And I didn't get it. And the second was when a young man asked about a life decision he had to make. And I don't remember exactly what the life decision was. Let's say it was whether he should go to Israel and live on a kibbutz for a year or stay here and try to get a job, try to figure out what his career was. And he told Bernie that he wasn't sure that he had made enough spiritual progress to go to Israel. And Bernie said, in essence, don't wait until you're enlightened to serve others. You'll find yourself waiting forever. Serve others now. That's the embodiment of your enlightenment. Practice realization. And if you read Bearing Witness, Bernie is very honest, or maybe it's in Instructions to the Cook. I don't know which one, but he said, "I'm a pushy guy. I'm impatient to bring healing to the world," and he encouraged us to be impatient. It's the same teaching as Shinryu Roshi's "Roll Up Our Sleeves." Same teaching. I vow to heal myself and others. So these are the three tenets of a Zen peacemaker. And I encourage all of us to work with them deeply. And I have two ending poems today. The first one is actually included at the beginning of Bernie Glassman's Instructions to the Cook. And it's a dedication to his teacher, Taizan Maizumi Roshi. So if Bernie is our Dharma grandfather, Maizumi Roshi is the great-grandfather of our lineage. And he says, Bernie writes, playing freely in self-fulfilling and other fulfilling samadhi, I vow to maintain and nourish the one Buddha mind seal. Life after life, birth after birth, practicing diligently, I vow to never let die the wisdom seed of the Buddhas and ancestors. Truly, I vow this to you in deepest gratitude. Bernard Tetsugen Glassman. And I want to end with a second poem, which is by Mary Oliver, because her path to action was her poetry. And it's a lovely thing to realize that there are many ways of manifesting bodhisattva action. There are as many ways of manifesting bodhisattva action in your life as there are bodhisattvas. Your bodhisattva action is a complete expression. My bodhisattva action is a complete expression. And this is also what Bernie is saying, and it's what Dogen is saying. And I also end with Mary Oliver because I like the fact, and I want to live in a world where there are both Bernie Glassmans and Mary Olivers. So here is Mary Oliver's The Summer Day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last, and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Thank you for your practice.